What are the 5 reasons that you won't give up when life catches you on the blind side? When the messenger of misery visits you, what are you going to do? What will keep you in the game when life knocks you to the canvas?
Life's going to punch you right in the face. Life's going to fire you over and over again. You're going to be told you're not good enough. Your faith is going to be tested. Your family's going to look you in the
Because if you can look up, you can get up.
You don't have to be grim, but you do have to be serious. Hey, everybody hopes things will get better, but remember, the future does not get better by hope. It gets better by plan. And hope unaided by clear plans can finally become an illness. There's a Bible phrase that says, hope long delayed makes the heart sick. It's a sickness. I used to have the illness known as passive hope. It's bad. And there's one that is even worse, and that is called happy hope. That is really bad. The man is 50, and he's broke, and he's still smiling. That's bad. So get serious. Make plans. Put them on paper. My suggestion from experience. There's a phrase from the Bible that goes, without dreams and vision, we perish. How true. Humans have this unique ability to aspire, to dream, to go for something, to become something. Without that, life is not life. We must have dreams and never give up on our dreams. I'd like to share a few ways your use of time are affected by or influence the achievement of your goals. Have you ever thought that without some very clear written goals, you never even need to consider managing your time? Time essentials come from objectives well defined. Time can't be critical if objectives aren't defined. Now you might be one of those uniquely fortunate individuals who can keep all their objectives and purposes clearly defined in their minds and operate from that. But I wouldn't take the chance. Write your goals down and set careful priorities. Sometimes priorities are determined by the season. For a farmer in springtime, the season dictates his most important activities. During the spring, a farmer must work around the clock, burn the midnight oil, and keep the equipment running because he has only this small window of time for the planting of his crops. One of the difficulties of living in an industrialized society is the losing of the sense of seasons. When to pour it on, when to ease back, when to take advantage. It's easy to keep going from 9 to 5, year in and year out, and lose a natural sense of priorities and appropriate time. Don't let one year just blend into the next. Keep an eye on your own seasons, lest you lose track of values and substance. Part of setting priorities is learning to separate major activities from minor activities. This is a whole skill in itself, but once you have learned it, it will pay dividends you won't believe. So learn to put everything on your mental scales to be carefully weighed before you spend time or money.
Of your sanity is socially distributed. And what I mean by that is, well, let's say that you know how to behave. You're well socialized. You can play with others. Now, I said already in this conversation, if you didn't learn to play with others between the time you were 2 and 4, you will never learn. And psychologists have beat their heads against the wall trying to rehabilitate antisocial children. They can't do it after the age of 4.
Is that because areas of the brain just don't develop?
Well, it seems to be partly because the kids fall farther and farther behind. So let's say you make the leap from egocentric dependence on your mother at 2 and 3 to immersion in a peer group. Well, then you pick peers that are at your same developmental level, and you chase each other up the developmental ladder. And the longer you're out of that, the farther you fall behind. And so, you know, kids, 5-year-old kids might come across another 5-year-old kid who tends to cry too much if they don't get their way. And they'll say, we don't want to play with the baby. And what they're saying is, we have to find someone who's at our developmental level, shares our developmental horizon, so that we can mutually scaffold our further development. Now, they're not going to say that, obviously, but that's the situation. And kids test each other out when they first meet. So do adults. Game. Can you play? Are you playing at the same level as me? I'm playing my game at the level that will further my development. Can you play along with me? If not, well, maybe you're lower in status and I can pull you up as a mentor. Maybe you're higher in status and I can learn from you, but if you're a peer, we can play together. Anyways, if you're acceptable to your peers and you behave well, they'll accept you. And then they tell you all the time if you're acting appropriately. You know, if your jokes are funny, if you're dominating the conversation, if you're bringing something of value to the table. And all you have to do is pay attention to the social cues, and you'll keep yourself regulated.
And at the end of the day, you're going to get what you focus on. They're both true. This is both the most amazing time that's ever happened, ever in recorded history. And yet real things that are terrifying are also happening. But where you put your energy, where you put your attention, where you put your focus, is going to determine what you see. And that is the most fascinating and the most important thing you have to understand about the way that your mind works. You get what you focus on. If you focus on the things that are bad, they will become real. They will become exaggerated. They will begin to monopolize your thoughts. You'll see them everywhere. It's called the reticular activating system. Your mind is literally designed to pay attention to the things that you notice. Once you notice a certain car, you see it everywhere. Once you notice a certain dog, you see it everywhere. Once you hear a certain name for the first time, suddenly you realize that that name has been all around you this entire time. But now that you're focusing on it, now that you're looking for it, it is everywhere. So whatever you look for, it's going to be everywhere. If you look for the negative, it'll be there. But if you look for the positive, it will overwhelm you.
When you manage something, you do so to keep it going. Well, you don't need to keep time going. You don't even need to watch it. You can be completely unaware of it. You can go to sleep. Doesn't matter. Time just continually moves. Doesn't need you. It doesn't need me. It just keeps moving. We don't need to do time management because there's nothing to manage. It's automatic. It continually moves. What we need to do is priority management. With the time that is continually slipping away from us, we need to manage our priorities to maximize the time we have. So don't manage your time, maximize your time. How? By doing the things that are the most important to do at that moment. Make every day your masterpiece.
Well, God wants us all to be courageous because He knows we'll face times in life and situations and circumstances that it takes more than just a desire, it takes courage. Many people operate on the basis of fear, on the basis of what other people think. We as believers should operate on the basis of courage. Courage to say no when we ought to say no. Courage to say yes when we should say yes. So what kind of courage do you have? Is yours sort of floating between depending on the situation? Or do you know the difference between right and wrong for your life? And you've made up your mind.
Do we sit down and let change just happen to us? Or are we just watching change happening around us? Or are we aware that change is happening within us? Or are we going to be those proactive people who make sure that we affect what happens to us? Change also produces 4 types of people. They are in this room. First of all, there are people who watch things happen. Not all change is improvement. You used to weigh 128, and now you changed. And for some of you, that's not an improvement. You lost your wardrobe. You lost your ability to climb up steps fast. You even lost the quality of health that you had. Change doesn't mean improvement all the time. But the problem is, without change, there can be no improvement. So you have to decide what to do with change. Change will happen, and if you are not careful, it could be destructive. So you have to determine, what kind of change do I want in my life? And I want you as a young person, as a mother and a father, as a business person, to think about your company even, or your family, or your educational pursuit. What kind of classes do you want to take in college this year? What kind of grades do you want? What kind of relationships you want to have in your life? Who do you want to drop and who do you want to pick up in your relationships? What kind of people do you want to associate with? Where do you want to travel that you've never been? What are the books you need to read you never read before? The changes come with choices. So what kind of person are you?
Drive. That's this puppy right here. This is what you want. This is your prefrontal cortex. Drive is the mode where you're in charge of your thoughts, okay? It's where you are fully awake, you are present, and you are driving your thoughts and actions. When you're doing that, your prefrontal cortex is active. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that you need in order to learn new behavior, in order to do something difficult, in order to do something uncertain, in order to do strategic thinking. So I'm going to give you an example. So I'm a righty. If I were to try to write with my left hand, Lewis is going to torture me and tie my hand behind my back and make me do this, I could do it. It would look like I was writing with my foot. And if Lewis came up to me and said, "Hey Mel, you want some bulletproof coffee?" I'd be like, "Lewis, I'm trying to concentrate. I can't do this." My prefrontal cortex would be el fuego, because it is firing on all cylinders to communicate to my hand new behavior. So the thing that's cool about that is that you can use a simple trick. The moment you feel yourself hesitate, the moment you've got one of those moments where you know that you need to, this is that moment that Lewis talks to you about where you got to step outside of your comfort zone and you've got to lean into your passion and you've got to really take some risks and you got to feel the fear and you got to do it anyway. That's the moment where you just woke up. And now you got a decision to make. Are you going to drift back into the habits, or are you going to awaken your prefrontal cortex and drive forward and focus and do something new?
I am a strong believer that we quit. Because why? How does a 297-pound cockroach guy who quit on everything is now considered one of the baddest men on the planet? How is that possible? It means I had to change one thing, my mindset. So there's no way in hell that was in me, but that guy was in me. It wasn't like God came down here and said, "Hey, guess what, man? You're a fat ass, but I'm gonna now make you a badass. I'm gonna miracle this to be a badass." No, it was in me. I had to believe and make that belief work. And through hard work, I did that.
And if you understand the mind, it does what you tell it. That's its job. And if you tell it better stuff, you have an amazing life. And if you tell it mediocre stuff, you have a mediocre life.
I want you to think about this goal that you want. I want you to envision it and see it in your mind's eye. And every day say to yourself that it's possible. See, most people are not accumulating wealth. Most people are living in poverty. Most people are living far below their potential, not because they don't have the capacity, not because they have not been given authority and dominion over everything on the face of the earth, but most people are living like they're living because of the fact that they don't believe they can have any more than what they now have. In the book called Miseducation of the Negro, Dr. Carter G. Woodson said, if you can determine what a man shall think, you'll never have to concern yourself with what he will do. If you can make a man feel inferior, you never have to compel him to seek an inferior status, for he will seek it himself. And if you can make a man feel justly an outcast, you never have to order him to go to the back door. He'll go without being told. And if there's no door, his very nature will demand one. That's why Scripture reminds us, be ye not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. So every day you have to sell yourself and get out of your mind those old thoughts, that old belief system. Every day you've got to sell yourself on that it's possible. That you got to put a new mind in you. You got to get out of your mind. You got to begin to restructure your thinking. Every day you've got to begin to recondition your mind. See, many of us go through life making choices, thinking it's our choices, and it's not. What do you mean by that? I'm reminded of the great anthropologist Margaret Mead. She was in a restaurant in Europe, and a waiter saw her and said, "Oh, how are you? I'm so glad to see you." He said, "There are several other Americans here tonight." And she said, "Is that right?" He said, "Yes." She said, "When you serve them dessert, let me know and I'll tell you exactly how many are here." He said, "That's not possible." She said, "Let me know after you serve dessert." When he served dessert, he came back and he told her. She got up, she walked around, and she looked and she observed, and she said, "You have exactly 65 Americans here." He checked the guest list and he was amazed. He said, "How did you know that?" She said, "Because in Europe, when you eat a slice of pie or cake, you eat it from the back toward the tip. In America, when we eat a slice of pie or cake, we eat it from the tip toward the back." How many of you, when you eat a slice of pie or cake, you eat it from the tip toward the back? Raise your hands, please. Good. Now, what else is in your mind? What else are you doing unconsciously that you don't even know? I'm going to say something and I want you to answer it after it. I want you to end it for me. Winston tastes good like what? How many of you don't even smoke Winston but know it? Raise your hands, please. Now, that commercial been off the air for 30 years. 30 years. See, let me share something with you. The easiest thing I've ever done was to earn $1 million. The most difficult thing I've ever done was to believe it could happen to me. That was the most difficult part, to believe that given my circumstances, if my birth parents came down this aisle right now, I would not know either one if my daddy came up here or my mother came up here. Given the fact that I was born in an abandoned building on a floor, being labeled educable, mentally retarded, not having any college training, I used to feel all my life that people who had college degrees were more intelligent than me. I remember going to see the late Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, the author of the book, The Power of Positive Thinking. And I used to look at him up on stage and I said, I could do that. I would love to talk to people. I love to talk to people. And I said, I could do that. But then when I started going back to my car, my mental conditioning activated itself. And it said, Les Brown, you can't do that. You don't have a college education. Les Brown, you can't do that. You don't have the training. You've never worked for a major corporation. You can't do that. What makes you think you can earn $5, $10, $15, $20,000 in an hour? You don't earn that now working for 2 or 3 months. What makes you think that you can speak for AT&T, Procter & Gamble, McDonald's Corporation, General Electric? These are clients I have now. You've never even worked for them. How many of you ever thought about something you wanted to do and you talk yourself out of it? Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. That inner conversation is what's going to haunt you After standing here and saying, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. After saying that again and again, we are more than conquerors. That inner conversation will cause you, when you leave here, to go back leading a life of mediocrity, leading a life of unproductivity, leading a life of poverty.